only 4 games into a season. This is going to drop drastically, one would think. But their average margin of victory is by 25 points a game. Wow. So Golden State Warriors seeming to be not at all world champion hangover or anything like that. Clicking on all cylinders already out the gates. And they're going to have to, being a Western Conference team. That's just the way it is. Then, with one loss in the Western Conference, we've got the Oklahoma City Thunder at 3-1, the Utah Jazz at 2-1, and maybe your Minnesota Timberwolves at 2-1. Then, above 500 yet, we've got the Grizzlies at 3-2 and the Spurs at 2-2. Mavs, Suns, Nuggets, and Trailblazers all at 500 with 2 wins, 2 losses. Rockets out to a slow start at 1-3. Kings 1-3, and then our 2 winless teams in the West would be the Lakers at 0-4, and surprisingly, the Pelicans at 0-4. So there is your balls dribble thrown into the balls on fire segment. I love pro basketball in general as a sport. One of my absolute favorites. And I'm just stoked to have the season here. All right. There we go. Balls on Fire has officially been put out. He said put out. All right. Thanks again for listening. This is Balls Deep Sports Talk on WNLMradio.com. Also on the Spreaker app, TuneIn app, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. A lot more sports to discuss on the show. Okay, so where do we go from here? Should we go football? World Series wrap up, hockey. Those are the main topics we got yet. The 4 major sports, like I said. It's the only time really all year that we get to talk about, relative games and events in all 4 at one time. Outside of off-season type of stuff. So, well, I shouldn't have put it off this long. So, for the meat of the show, we got to devote it to world champions. I mean, we have newly crowned world champions in the world of baseball. For the first time in, 30 years, the Kansas City Royals are Major League Baseball champions. Now, the Kansas City Royals defeated the New York Mets in 5 games to win their first world championship since 1985. And, I was really amped for this World Series, and it just, it went by in the blink of an eye. Maybe that's just the way it felt or was for me. But it just, I don't know. I was really hopeful with these 2 Cinderellas. One being the better team of the 2, the other, though, being the hottest team in the baseball postseason playoffs. I wanted a competitive 6-7 game, back and forth World Series, and we did not get that at all. Now, the first game of the World Series was crazy. It had starts and stops and was super close. Royals ended up winning it 5-4. I said actually here on the show, will be really interesting to see if the way that game was decided, not what was decided per se, but how it was decided, if that stole the Mets' je ne sais quoi, their mojo, their essence, their libido, their life force, what the French call a certain, I don't know what. And it certainly appeared to then in the second game, where the Royals just crushed the Mets 7-1 to take a 2-0 series lead. Well, they headed back to New York, and thank you again, New York, for winning one game, because we wouldn't have got that Game 5 and had the biggest sports day of the year without it. So the Mets coming back home, overachieve, get a little momentum back, win 9-3, fairly handedly. But then Royals Game 4, Halloween night, put the foot down and said, okay, that's enough. and they won the game 5-3, so, somewhat convincingly. And then from there, I think that was the point. Like I think game 1 and game 4 were really the two keys in this series, and both of them went the way of the Royals. Game 1 was the get in the driver's seat, establish momentum, gain control of the series, just confidence, everything. The Royals won out there. Then that carried over into game 2. So then game 3, the Mets did what they're supposed to do, win at home, kind of get things back going to, okay, everything's just playing out the way it's supposed to. Home games, home team wins home games. You're the team without home field advantage. You're going for a game 7 where anything can happen. But like I said, then the huge game 4, either the Mets tie it up at 2 games apiece, or the Mets take a commanding 3-1 lead. Either the Mets tie it up at 2 games apiece, or the Royals take a commanding 3-1 lead, and that's exactly what they did, winning 5-3. So then, game 5, down 3-1 at home. If you're, the Mets were at home, desperate, not really believing anymore. Not even knowing getting to the point where you feel like, well, so what if we win this one game? There's no way we can go to their place and win 2 in a row. They just didn't have the effort, didn't have the production, and the Royals won the decisive and final game 5 very easily and convincingly by a final score of 7-2. But all in all, it was a great Major League Baseball season. Like I said, I could have used a few more games in the World Series or some closer, more dramatic games in the World Series. But again, all in all, a great Major League Baseball season. And one final note on the World Series, the MVP for the Royals was their catcher, Salvador Perez. He's got to be one of somewhere like 4 or 5 catchers ever to get a World Series MVP. That is not a position that very regularly wins the World Series MVP award, or any kind of MVP award, or any kind of award period for that matter. Maybe, just maybe, my baseball guru, Mr. Clean, could research that for me, and I'll share that interesting little statistic with you next week as far as how many catchers Salvador Perez joins as being a World Series MVP. But congratulations to World Series MVP Salvador Perez, as well as the Kansas City Royals and their fan base. Much deserved, long time coming, and just don't turn into the Red Sox now, okay? That's all we ask. All right, so let's see. Boy, what else do we got in baseball? Zach Greinke, pitcher of the Dodgers, is going to be hitting the free agency market, it looks like, this Major League Baseball offseason. Look for him to break the bank somewhere, whether it be re-signing with the Dodgers or moving to a new team. And then as far as the hirings and firings go, we discussed how the Dodgers had fired manager Don Mattingly on last week's show, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago even. But I know recently we discussed that here on the show. And I said that the Florida Marlins were already interviewing him, and that the Dodgers would more than likely make a very big whoop-de-doo, to-do, look at us, this is a huge thing, type of production about their hiring of a new manager, and that's exactly what's going on right now. They've got at least nine right now that I've seen names that they plan to interview for that manager job. The most interesting and notable by far being one LA Dodgers legend, Kirk Gibson. Now, if you don't have all the details, this would just seem like a no-brainer. Yeah, that's why wasn't he hired in the first place type of thing. Kirk Gibson obviously hit the super famous injured home run to help them win the World Series back in 80, freaking whatever the heck it was. The famous scene, he's running the bases, clutching his arm by his side, limping. But he's an icon, a legend in LA Dodgers lore, always beloved by that fan base. And he does have managerial experience. He was the manager of the Diamondbacks for 4 or 5 seasons, from 2010 through 2014. I don't know if that added up to be 5 seasons or 4. So, again, totally seems like perfect fit, right? Well, large reason he quit managing the Diamondbacks, I believe, in 2014 at least. I believe this would have been a large reason. Not necessarily due to lack of success, but due to the fact that in 2014, Kirk Gibson was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So it's hard to envision how that would realistically work. And if it's something that they are really genuinely considering going in that direction of, because I just think the unknowns in a situation like that would make the risk outweigh the reward from a business standpoint to where you wouldn't make that decision. And if that is the case, then why are you bringing him in? To begin with, is it just a shameless publicity stunt, PR move, or do you have genuine, hope and expectations that this guy could be your guy? But so it'll be interesting to see, how that interview process all plays out. Like I said, he's just one of 9 candidates that they've got planned or announced right now. Who knows? That might change. They might add more to that yet. But I'm sure, like I said, it will be a big announcement. It'll be in everybody's faces. They will make sure that the whole world knows who their new manager is when they decide that. And, it could be within a week or two. They might have someone come in that they absolutely just fall in love with and they know he's the guy and let's do it. Or they might drag it out a month or 2 or 3. Who knows? But it'll be interesting to see the route they go. And like I said, boy, if they do end up hiring Kirk Gibson, that will be just a round-the-clock sports news marathon? I don't know. Couldn't find the word. But yeah, so there we're gonna call that. Yeah, we're gonna call that the meet for this week. I know it was only about a 15-minute a mini meet compared to the size of meat you usually get from us here on the show. But we got plenty more to talk about. Yeah, I'm gonna ramble about football for quite a while. Gotta get some hockey talk in, some hockey talk, as well as NASCAR, quickies, and maybe a few others. So yeah, that's our devotion to baseball. Like I said, there just wasn't a ton to take away from the World Series. There was a ton to take away from the playoffs as a whole. There was a ton to take away from the season as a whole. But as far as that specific series, just not enough content, not enough content. But all right. That is, boom. Meat is wrapped up because it is important to wrap up the meat. All right. What do we do after we give you the meat? That's right. It is time for the spew. That is right. The spew is our listener-named weekly football segment. I love football. We talk both college football and NFL football here in the spew of the show. And boy, I'm not sure which one we'll start with this week. If we'll start college and finish pro, or start pro and finish college. Let's start NFL football. That's right. Bum 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 bum. Dun 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 dun.